It is a familiar tactic of the Assad regime to blame others for what is happening in their country, to try to get out of responsibility for the scale of death and destruction. And we're absolutely sickened in the British government and across the international community by what we've seen over the last couple of days, in particular the deaths of more than 100 unarmed men, women and children. Of course, they are part of 12,000, perhaps 15,000 deaths in Syria over the last year, predominantly at the hands of the regime. And so they are more statistics in that huge total, but I think they also shine a light for the whole world on the nature of this conflict, on the oppression and brutality of the regime, and the deaths of so many children, although they are among, again, many hundreds of children who have been tortured, abused or murdered by the Assad regime, again illuminates the type of tyranny that the people of Syria have been experiencing. So the British government is taking several steps in response. I've already given instructions that the Syrian chargé d'affaires be summoned to the Foreign Office so that we can underline our absolute horror at what has happened, but also our continued insistence that the Syrian regime should implement Kofi Annan's six-point plan that they currently refuse to do. I've also called for urgent discussions in the United Nations Security Council so the world as a whole can put more pressure on the Syrian regime. We're also discussing with our allies what other steps we can take over the coming days, and within the European Union we will be working on more sanctions on the regime. I've also discussed this morning with Kofi Annan, the UN Special Representative on these matters, who's traveling to Damascus for meetings tomorrow. I've discussed with him the scope for increasing the size of the UN monitoring mission, which is currently coming up to its strength of 300 monitors. We think there's a good case for increasing the size of that mission. And I've discussed with him the urgency of getting a political process going in Syria, which is his objective, before time runs out. Time will run out before too long on that. I'm traveling to Moscow later this evening to discuss with the Russian foreign minister this situation. The Russians have a great deal of leverage over the Syrian regime. We've had many differences of view over Russia at the Security Council, but Russia does support the Annan plan. And so I hope Russia will redouble its efforts to get the Assad regime to implement that plan. It's not in the interests of Russia, just as it's not in the interest of anybody in the world, for Syria to descend into an even bloodier situation and into full-scale civil war. And that is now the danger.